it's always tough to speak after a speaker of stature of Mr. Murugan, right? So I have a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is speaking after him. So I'm going to be really trying hard because I'm not into social innovation. I'm not into impacting life, which I really would love to do at some stage of my life. I'm more into design being used initially for profit, but with a larger objective of looking as a cultural dimension or adding on a cultural dimension into this growing country, right? So the good part is I've got all you guys fresh. I was slotted for the last hour of the day, so I requested Harin if I can be somewhere in the beginning so that I can put in maximum input. They're still taking some time to put on the slides. What I'm going to basically talk about is design at two levels, okay? And my whole presentation, it's a fairly lengthy one, so I request your patience. All designers do lengthy presentations, but colorful ones also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how design or design thinking is being used as an object or as a noun, and then later on how design thinking is used as an action or a verb, and how I sort of practiced both the cases in Big Bazaar. I'm going to take specifically Big Bazaar because Big Bazaar generally is perceived as a place which is for value, which is for fruits and vegetables, which is for janta, which is, so the designers, when I hire them and I tell them, guys, you want to join Big Bazaar as a design thinker or as a designer, the first answer is no. Right, so I'm trying my best in the supermarket industry also to change the thought and the perception of design. What Mr. Murugan talked about design is from a very different angle, right? And that's what I'm going to stress further down. It is not to do anything with an aesthetics of a product. It's not to do with a great UI or a UX alone. It's also got to do with the whole system of how the things are given together to the end user, right? So I'm going to really talk about that. There's an article which I read last week on one of the journals. I don't know if you guys read design. There's a journal called Fast Code Design. Do you guys read that? Fast Code Design? Nobody? Everybody's silent? Okay. So I read that this, and I found it pretty interesting, and also it sort of complements what I do. I'm the chief design officer in Future Group. The CEO of a Future, is it a designer in chief? Now this definitely does not mean that designers get into the rooms of CEOs, push them out and sit on the chair, right? It means how the CEOs of the future can actually inculcate the design thinking process, design thinking philosophy, and a design thinking mindset. Because as we are moving ahead, the traditional management, which was always taught to us, which was actually conceptualized about 200 years back during the industrial age, the traditional management is actually facing a lot of questions on a day-to-day life. Because our day-to-day life is not as structured, not as hierarchical, not as process-driven as what the traditional management teaches us. So will a designer be able to, or a design mindset be able to influence the future of management? And that's something which I'm personally quite passionate about. Try to practice in Future Group. Difficult because you have 1 is equal to, or 1 ratio 100 in terms of the design versus the traditional management, but we are being successful at some points. And I'm going to share a case study of that as an FBB, because I also manage the FBB concept as a business head. This is where my journey is, right? How many designers in this room, or design thinkers in this room? Okay, we've got about 20%. I was expecting a little more, anyways. But my also hope is, and how many creative people in this room? Okay, the rest are non-creative ones. Okay. So my hope is that by the time we end the session, everybody in this room thinks that he is a designer. Okay? Everybody in this room, because everybody designs, everybody does something where, and design, if you look at theoretically, design means what you have today, how you change the status quo for a better tomorrow. That's design, right? So what is today and what is going to be tomorrow, how you change the status quo, that's basically design. So when you are a business manager, when you are a IT professional, when you are a fashion designer, when you are a social worker, what are you doing? You're simply challenging the status quo of today because you want to change it for tomorrow. And that's design, right? So I started about 20 years back in design. During my college, I remember I used to think of something to do with creativity. So I ventured into choreography, I ventured into fashion. In 2 years, 3 years, 20 years back, fashion was nothing but picking up a Vogue or a Cosmopolitan and just replicating the designs. And in about 2 years, I realized this is not my cup of tea because it's not genuine. It does not impact anybody except the desires of the fancy designer whom I was working with. And I moved and I started thinking about what else can we do with design. Parallelly, my brothers, my sisters, everybody became income tax officers, doctors, engineers, and I was told, what are you going to do? So yes, we stumbled a bit. Those 5-7 years were a little tough because you really, and I'm sure a lot of young guys today even have that identity crisis. You are taking a field, you are a designer, but you're still not sure whether that's what you want, right? Because what you're really looking for in life is what is your larger purpose, and you're looking. It might be fuzzy or not be, even today I'm not able to explain what my final purpose is. But you are always looking for a purpose as your core of your life. And somewhere you keep on looking for tools to solve that purpose. So when I ventured into design, I started off as a fashion designer. I did from NIFT 20 years back. And retail at that time was extremely nascent. There was nothing called organized retail, right? We still ventured in. We said we'll do something. I consulted a lot of people internally, externally. I think about 10 years, I came to know that I should get into something like retail design. Because in retail design, the scale, the materials, the impact on the consumer generally tends to be much more realistic because you see the reactions of the user when you make a product. So I ventured into retail design. But then I wanted to find out a larger meaning of design, because it's not just about coming into the office, make some architectural drawing, interior drawing, and giving it off and saying, I've done wonderful thing. So design then I started coming into my mind as something where I can make a larger impact. Now, what is the larger impact? As as Murugan, he just said that design in a social space, design for innovation in a social space. So can design thereby get into aspects of it and not as a specialty, not as a function, right? So I wanted to move beyond the functionality of the design or beyond the functionality of the design department. So I did my master's in design strategy, and I think that helped me to be very, very clear. So anybody, if wants to invest in education, you have a choice between work and education, I would say go for education. Because that really makes your theory and your thinking about what you want to do in life, it gives a very rock solid base, right? And today I'm hopefully looking for some more clarity and aspire to do something which our previous speaker has done, hopefully in the next few years. So this question is constantly in my mind, and I keep on asking my people, keep on asking everybody, right? Everybody knows what that is on the side. That's a juicer, right? It's a juicer by a designer called Philip Stark, right? It can be as crazy as that, and that's something which I constantly keep on questioning. Yeah, this is also design, right? Somebody calls it crap, somebody calls it design. Yeah. Now, if this designer, and this is the kind of, if you really be truthful as designers who are there in this, who are product designers, who are UI, UX, or communication designers, we do produce a lot of crap, right or wrong? We produce a lot of crap, and we assume that we've done a great job, right? But we do produce something like this, which is high on aesthetics, low on function, and it's about your personal intent coming out like an artist. And designers are not artists, right? That's the difference between an artist and a designer, and the difference between an innovator and a scientist. The innovation is marketable, scientists are working on their own passion. Similarly, artists are working on their own passion, designers work for the market, designers work for the society, right? So anyways, he made a cheerful toilet, good for him. I personally feel design is this, right? It's really about getting a genuine smile on the end user, right? It's really about how you can impact the end user. Making sanitary pads, wonderful, right? You guys have heard about Arvind Eye Care, right? Wonderful case study of design, right? I was just talking to some, there is interesting, there's something called Polaris, which I read about a couple of, somebody's heard of Polaris, right? It's a financial institution which has one of the largest design labs across the world. They have about, I think, 30,000 square feet of design lab. So I interact with the CEO there. And it's good to see design impacting financial organizations also, right? So design can bring in a lot of value add. I'll try to give some examples. I do not want to keep design, I'm stressing that point, I do not want to keep design as a functionality or as a specific subject matter. For me, design is Everybody sitting here in this room is actually a designer, right? If I ask you a question, in this city, in this room, in this community, what is designed or what is not designed? Can somebody tell me what is not designed? Let's take this room. What is not designed? Everything is designed, right? The way you're sitting, the chairs, everything is designed. There is nothing natural in this room. If you look at our city also, and the more you go towards Singapore or Dubai, even the plants are designed, right? So everything is designed, and it is planned and designed by somebody, right? And we as human beings tend to live within these environments, these products, these artifacts, which are designed, and they start changing the way we live. They start changing our habits, right or wrong? If we constantly keep on living in a very cramped up, noisy location compared to a hill station, there are two different people with two different behaviors, two different habits, right? And what basically turns habits, they turn into rituals. Because what you do daily, it becomes a ritual. I'm sure at some point, the Surya Namaskar was not really a ritual, it was a habit which somebody had gained, right? And it had some scientific thing behind it. That Surya Namaskar became a ritual, right? And that ritual later on became what? Culture. So thereby design has a strong significance of not just impacting the habit, but eventually impacting the culture. Now I'm saying how that culture really can be the key aspect of designers to not just change themselves, but change the community, change the ecosystem, change the organization where they are. So the designers have the capacity to do it, right? Apart from making beautiful products, useful products, they also have the capacity of making useful systems. And that's what I'm really interested in, where designers can make the system. One of my professors in Hong Kong, who unfortunately expired last year, this is what his explanation on design is, okay? And do excuse me if I become a bit theoretical, because I have that habit of becoming a bit professorial sometimes and then getting back into the real life. So I'll keep on flip-flopping. I really loved this sentence about design because it explains it completely, right? Design is to design a design to produce a design. And everybody in this room does this. Nobody can say, I don't design. I don't produce. I don't take an action. Everybody does that. You should read his book, John Heskett. You should read his books. He's got a couple of books, extremely good. Two aspects he mainly focuses on, and we all designers focus on. One is the noun, and one is the verb. This remote is a noun. It's designed, right? But making of this remote and the process behind of making this remote, which is from conceptualization or from user understanding to conceptualization, to insights, to conceptualization, to brainstorming, to making it. That's what it leads to making of this remote. That's the verb. That's the action, right? So that's where the design really is moving towards. So I'm going to focus on these two once again, as I said. Even in Hong Kong, when I was there, people used to ask me, oh, you're a designer, what do you design? Do you design buildings? Do you design clothes? Do you design? So when I say, no, I try to design the organizational systems, they would say, no, how does that happen? Because that is done by the HR, or that is done by the CEO, right? But I think there is a world opening up. There are companies as local as what Mr. Murugan's company is, and there are companies like P&G where design has been integrally used as a part of the organizational change. This is Big Bazaar, right? And I'm sure all of you, moment you think of the word Big Bazaar, you think of this. Crowd, noise, chaos, right? And great prices. But this is all designed, right? This is all designed. If you look at the top left corner, just as an example, and these are the big days, when we have these so-called 26 Jan, we get in every store about 25 to 30,000 customers in one store. Our store sizes are from 40,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet, and imagine getting 30,000 customers in a 50,000 square feet. What chaos and what. So you need to make a bit of that system. The top left is actually, we went and got literally inspired from Tirupati. The way the queue management is, the way the things are, and how you sort of build that into that. So that's how the chaos theory, we have this word inside Big Bazaar called creatively chaotic. So we try to use that word as much as possible in the organizational setup. So when people join a company, we say we are very creatively chaotic. We are not a process-driven company. We love processes, right? But we don't worship them. We make sure that they are there in their place, because processes make things very rigid, right? Still a fight going on between us and the traditional management background people. Big Bazaar basically is all about design democracy, right? It's all about inclusivity, because we wanted to reach the maximum number of masses across the country. We are not Gucci's and Pradas. We don't want to be Gucci's and Pradas. We want to reach to every guy, and we want to convert the traditional consumer to a modern retail consumer. And we've had a huge amount of acquisition in the last 8 to 10 years where the traditional consumer moved into a modern retail customer, right? So this basically is the design brief. This basically is the design core for Big Bazaar. Whenever we design something, right, we basically follow this kind of a flow, outward flow. As I stressed on this point before, what is the core purpose? Purpose of your business, purpose of your design, purpose of your existence. It can apply to you as a human being, you as an organization, you as a department, or you as a designer. From purpose, we move into construction, which is basically about how it is made. So you tend to play with materials, you tend to play with, like as a store designer, I tend to play with different materials. The steel gives a cold feel, a wood gives a warm feel, etc., etc. Then we move into the functionality, how it does, how am I going to apply this in the context, how it feels, as I said, and how it looks. Aesthetics is the covering of the whole thing, because sometimes designers tend to put too much of stress on the last core, which is aesthetics. But that need not be the first point to start with, right? The first point is purpose, first point is meaning. Some of the physical things, when I talked about nouns, some of the physical things which turn into a strategy or which turn into an executable strategy is what we are doing. We started Big Bazaar. I remember that time there was no modern trade of such large scale, right? The best of the retailers would be Madura, Arvind, with smaller stores. So opening up a 50,000 square feet was like, the first step into the modern trade. And we used to have debates about, because customers were not used to such large spaces, we did not want to follow the conventional Western philosophy of retail design or design strategy, if I have to say. We wanted to do a very Indianized version of design. So one of the things was inclusivity, which was the core to it. Why would a customer enter? Now, today, if I go to a very well-to-do store, if I go to Europe and I enter a Prada store, I do feel a bit inhibited about entering, taking that first step, right? And that's the Lakshman Rekha we talk about. How do you break the Lakshman Rekha? Through design, through the physicality of design. That's where we said, if I have to, and it comes into materials then, if I have my road which is gray in color, which is all tarred, should I have a flooring inside the space? It's a small thing, but how it links to your core philosophy, how the flooring can be very similar. So we started deliberately using Kota stone as a material. We could have used tile. There was no issue, right? Just because the cost spent is almost same. But we used Kota, so the gray continues with the gray. So you don't have this line of entering into a big box retail from a noisy, not so clean street outside. Number one. Number two, the same Lakshman Rekha we applied when the departments are. In retail, the theory is, general theory is that when you're able to make the customer come from the aisle, which is the pathway, to the back of the wall, which is where your products are really displayed, if you're able to get him through that, your conversions almost go 30% higher, right? Now the point is, if you see the Western retail, they will always put a line along the aisle. Why? Because they want to be systematic. They want to be structured. They want to be within the lines. We do not want that. And you'll see some pictures which completely defies this whole theory of aisles and retail space and walking space and all that. So Lakshman Rekha was the first thing we abolished. There are a lot of examples. I'm sharing a few of them. Otherwise, we can talk the whole day. So I'm not. It was all about psychological, little more than the physical. We as Indians don't mind the physicality as long as I get my deal, as long as I get the buzz, as long as I get the feel, right? A lot of young guys here. You go to discos, right? You go to pubs. You don't go to an empty pub. You go to a crowded pub where people are pushing you, beer is spilling over, you are talking to each other. You like that place, right or wrong? Or do you guys all go to empty pubs, right? So you go to crowded places. It is psychological that when you go to crowded places, it is being loved by people. And it's not a Indian phenomenon, it's world over, right? You always go to crowded places. So psychologically, if you make a space where you are able to see the crowd, where you are able to jostle with the crowd, where you are able to, almost, which is my next slide, butt brush with the people, it's fine. This position which I'm talking about is 10 years back. I'm sure some bit of change and evolution has happened in us as human beings, right? But there are some traditional things which we as Indians, we can't change among ourselves, right? I mean, if you stand in the airport, you leave a gap of 2 feet. The guy behind you will peep over as if there's something inside your pocket. So these things are there psychologically engraved in our minds. And I think it takes a lot of time for these things to change. So we challenge the traditional butt brush theory. Because traditional retail in conventional Western retail says you cannot have butt brush. It's like a harakiri to do a butt brush in the whole thing. But we challenge that. That's a chemist shop. I mean, you know what chemist, like if you go to I remember as All India Medical Institute in Delhi, there used to be this line of chemist shops. One shop so crowded that there's no space, 10 shops empty. So there's something about that one shop where the medicines probably are cheaper, better, I don't know. But psychologically you get crowded and you don't mind the butt brush. Lot of spattle buzz. Has anybody visited Big Bazaar during the big days? I think you guys should go to Big Bazaar, yeah? After my speech at least. In these big days, we changed the mode of retail. We quickly, in 2 days, changed the design mode, right? There are no more, I mean, we removed the shelves. We start putting these so-called thappis or rice gunny bags. And we have these girls or guys sitting on top of the thappi, which is about 10 feet high, carrying that gramophone and shouting like you are in a bazaar, right? Das ka do mein, something like that, right? So what it does is, it psychologically it sort of creates a greed, and it also creates a sense of urgency to buy. Because if you go to such markets, I'm sure that these markets exist in all cities in India, right? You always feel a sense of buzz. You always feel a sense of, I want to capture it, let me do it before the product goes off, right? The product goes nowhere, there's enough products, but you create that sense of urgency. Typical with women, even today, you go to a sabji market, you negotiate for 10 minutes over 1 rupee, you pick up the tomatoes, right? In spite of all the tomatoes being of the same color size, you will still pick it up as if you made some great deal. Now that's the accomplishment we engraved or bought in deliberately into our thought process. I don't think there's a great execution required, but it's a thought process into when we started Big Bazaar. As we are evolving, of course, we're getting into packaging, grading, sorting, etc. But initially we said this. In fact, I remember Kishorji addressing one set of, I think, crowd or set of press in US, where he said in these set of tomatoes, we deliberately put a couple of not so good tomatoes. So the woman starts sorting and she picks up the best of 5 tomatoes and she says, wow, I've got a deal today. Because the rest I've left for somebody else. So there is a sense of accomplishment. These small accomplishments bring in sort of a cheer or a sense of victory in the minds of the consumers. Then we also realized it's a part of the design process where you always do a design research, right? Now research does not mean that you do a PhD. Research means you open your eyes and you sort of look around in the world and see what's happening. Our previous speaker talked about saying design always looks for problems. So when we visited these, and we still do, we have a great ethnographic team within the organization, which is basically the human factors side. When they visited the trains in Bombay, they realized a lot of women, when they go from Churchgate to Virar, they're cutting vegetables, right, during the whole process. And I think this is evident in most of the busy cities, where women don't get time, so they start cutting vegetables. So we said, if that is the insight, what can we design? So we designed a Seva counter. In Bangalore, we prototyped it, where the Seva counter basically does all the negative labor for you, free of cost, right? So you want a coconut to be grated, you want a dough to be kneaded, you want fruits to be cut. You purchase it from Big Bazaar, you give it to us, we'll cut it for you, you can do the rest of the shopping, and you come back to it. We even extended it into dough making. You buy 5 kgs of atta, right? Tonight you want to have 500 grams of atta, we'll do 500 grams of kneading for you, and we can make it into chapati also. So tonight you can have dinner cooked from us, and the remaining you can just pack it as atta and take it home. Now this is all a part of the empathy which design says, and empathy and the solution which design gives. This is actually quite a big hit. We also then got in these so-called fresh elements as part of the design, right? We call it the Chakki Fresh and the Dairy Fresh and all that. I remember in Dairy Fresh in Kandivali in Bombay, we were even debating, should we have a cow inside Big Bazaar, right? So should we have, to really say freshness. Now see, all these ideas, if we think of it, we might find it unconventional, not so practical, right? But who has said that these can't be done? It is our own minds. It is our own restrictions saying the cow cannot be put inside. And if you think about a similar example, Harrods used to sell camels and elephants from the store, right? Harrods is one of the best retailers in UK. They used to sell camels and elephants. Now, if they can do, we suddenly feel, oh wow, a European guy has done. But when we put a cow inside the store, we feel a little squishy about it, right? And of course, the last, what we do in physical side of it is the community feel. How do you make communication design integral to your ownership, or the community starts owning you? So when we open stores now in tier 2, tier 3, I mean, some stores I've not even visited, like a Jharsuguda. I heard it about when we started opening, so I never heard of the place, right? Guwahati, all these towns, people start getting excited. They start saying, Mera Big Bazaar aa raha hai. Now this Mera word is very strong, right? Because it is a sense of ownership. And no bit of extra marketing or extra advertising can get you that if you start the store with this feel that my Big Bazaar is coming. The language helps you to bind that, because language is what articulates the person to another person or the brand to the person. So we ensure that the language is given in a much more rural, expressions are more, it's not just a English turned into a Tamil or a Telugu, but the entire expression changes. This is what we are today. We are about 182 stores. We are about 8.5 million square feet across the country. About 10,000 crores is what our turnover is, right? And we've been growing at a very healthy rate. We had a lot of retailers. We had Walmart coming in. We had Bharti coming in. We had a lot of people coming in, right? We know where they are right now. We're moving ahead. We open up about 2 lakh square feet every month across the country. We are focusing now a lot more on the tier 3 towns, the tier 2, tier 3 towns. The second part of my talk really is on the design as a verb, and this is where what interests me a lot. And I'm going to use a case study of when I was given this charge of saying, in fact, there was a time when I said I don't want to design products, I don't want to do store design. I want to do something which is slightly more strategic, slightly more thinking, slightly more impacting than just my functional department. So I was said that, how about you handle a business profile? I said, cool, that's okay with me. So I was given the FBB profile. FBB is Fashion at Big Bazaar. And I think more than FBB, people would know FBB as Femina Miss India FBB, right? So FBB was a profile given to me. The thought there was that I would really not look at only the aesthetic aspect of the product or aesthetic aspect of the store or aesthetic aspect of the sales staff, but I would look at the entire system of the FBB, how the FBB organization is being managed through a design angle, and how I would grow and how I would do the achievements. This is something which sort of defines this side of the design, which is more about processes, structures, etc. When anybody of you joins a large organization, I'm sure a lot of you are a part of it, these are the 3 sides of the organization, broadly, right? You've got the strategic side, you've got the organization which binds the whole thing, and then you've got the implementation side. This is where we try to put design at all levels. Okay, so design at a strategic level, which is planning, where we define. Somebody was asking me if, Devdutt Patnaik, you guys know Devdutt Patnaik, right? You guys know Devdutt Patnaik? Okay, good. So how design at a very philosophical, at a very thought level. So we used to discuss mythology with Dev, and along with that, brainstorm with Kishorji on how mythological insights can turn into design insights, and design insights can turn into business solutions. So that's where the strategic part really happens, but strategy, unless and until not executable, not worth a strategy. So design generally helps to execute that strategy. Right? This is what I was getting the problem with. This is what I was told you got to do, right? When I had my first review, if I have to call it. We need a healthier top line, we need better margins, we need a faster turnaround, we were not growing so much, and we need to reduce the operating cost. I thought this was all an outcome. This is a residual of what you sort of, and most of the CEOs focus on this. So a lot of meetings which I attend, the first thing is, oh, how do I get my returns on this? I remember last week we were doing a meeting on branding, and we were doing some celebrity brand, and the first question asked was, what is the ROI? ROI, Ranbir Kapoor cannot give you an ROI. Ranbir Kapoor can probably help you to build a brand. ROI is something which is a residual of what actions you do. Right? So for me, it was not really about these. It was really about the mind shift internally as an organization. and then hopefully expect the customer gets the same thing, customer reacts with the same way. And that's also the transition of how FBB is. So the last stage is where I got in. We changed the logo because I felt if you want to do a fashion brand, a mass fashion brand, if you want to do that, it has to be autonomous, it has to have its own standing. We cannot have much of a reliance on Big Bazaar to promote fashion. So we removed the word, we made it cleaner, and we called it India's fashion hub. This is what I had got in my hand when we started off, okay? 3 things which I focused on: culture, technology, creativity. For me, culture is the Kickstarter. The culture is what really changes things. And it's the most undefined part in any organization, right? Technology, a lot of IT guys here, right? Technology is an enabler. It's a wonderful enabler. But technology is not the solution. So technology helps and catalyzes in the solution, right? So you got to integrate technology into your insights, into your solution provision through a lot of creativity. Creativity is where design comes in, innovation comes in, wild thinking comes in, blue ocean strategy, which we talk about, that starts coming in, right? So we created a service chart. This chart was distributed across the key managers across the organization who were managing FBB, right? All the front-end category, the back-end category, so that everybody starts visualizing what our key aspects or perspectives are, right? So I'm not going to go into details because it takes a lot of time, but the primary idea is you could have had a bullet point circulated across the organization and say, let's do it, right? But people don't get involved. People need to be visually involved. People need to be told about the whole picture, right? So that's where I always contradict my thought by saying, you get a different feeling when you look at an Excel sheet. You get a different feeling when the same data is translated into a map, right? So the power of visualization sort of helps you to think on a larger picture rather than just the sections which is so very prominent in Excel sheet, right? I don't know if you guys have heard one question which keeps on repeating in design. So if I asked you guys, the room was 300 cubic meters big, is it easy to define that? Or 200 cubic meters, whatever the number is. Is it easy to know how big the room is? Difficult, right? Because your mind starts calculating in sections. This multiplied by this is equal to this. Now if I say the room was as big as a large elephant, easy, right? You suddenly start visualizing. Because the context is an elephant which you have already visualized, and thereby you can relate it to the room. So why not give this example in communicating your thoughts when you are doing your strategies in the organization? And if you look, most of the IT guys would know now, even the IT or the data analytics now has started getting into infographics, right? Infographics is nothing but a visualization of your data, and how easy or how simple can it be made. So I'll move ahead on this slide. So I really focused initially I think almost about 6 months on culture building with key influencers. Key influencers. I'm not talking key managers. I'm talking influencers. Influencers could be right at the store level, a sales guy. Influencer could be my operations head in the zones, right? So anybody, it's across hierarchies. So what we did is, large companies, if anybody is from a large company, tends to have this whole nature of saying, chalo karte hain, abhi karenge, aaram se karte hain. And the process keeps on going on and on and on till the cows come home. Nothing happens. And the whole factor of a job which can be done by 2 people is being done by 10 people creates that lethargy in the whole system. It creates hierarchy, it creates kingdoms, it creates a lot of things which are not wanted in the organizations. And I'm sure all the lean startups who are here will have a very different thought about it, right? So how do you ensure that you start thinking like a lean startup? How do you think like a startup? So what you do is, you have a large goal, you divide it into smaller goals. Those smaller goals you divide it into projects. Those projects you turn into project stakeholders who are responsible. And to each stakeholder you provide a milestone, saying you got to achieve this by this milestone. And you as a designer have an overview of the whole project, how it is going, where it is going, everybody is contributing. And at the same time jump in wherever possible to give the solutions. So neither you stay aloof, nor you get completely involved. You stay in a midpoint. So that's where we started terming these as projects. We made every month some deliveries. We also wanted to change this. So I interviewed a lot of senior managers during this phase, and the common question asked was, how big is my team? What is my budget going to be? What is my marketing budget going to be, right? And these are the people we should avoid taking in organizations, because they are not looking for a solution. They are looking for their kingdom. Can I have my kingdom here? So these people you need to avoid, because what we need is as we move ahead, like leadership really will not be about managing your people, right? That's something which even a landlord in a village with forced laborers can do. Leadership really is about influencing beyond your own team members to people who are outside your team, right? Your colleagues, who can be CEOs, CFOs, their juniors, etc., etc. Right? So leadership really is about influence. It's not about control. And of course, solution driven. Whenever a problem comes to me, it is my habit, and I have really tried to sharpen that habit. The moment problem comes, I stop thinking about the problem. Of course, I try to frame the problem in the right way, but the moment that is done, I stop thinking, I go for the solution. Right? So all my energy I put towards solution, whether it is impossible, whether it is possible. Again, we tried this whole thing of saying it has to be collaborative. So we've got 5 zones, how the zones work together, etc., etc. Have anybody of you done this exercise? It's called the marshmallow exercise. You've done, right? You've done, okay. I think you guys should do this. It's there on the YouTube. I do these workshops within the organization. It breaks the way we think. It really questions the way we think about how management could be. In this exercise, it's a simple task. You get these marshmallows, you get these thin straws. You have to create a highest tower by the straws and the marshmallows being joined. And the funny part is, in this exercise, the more senior the team is, the smaller the tower. Okay? And by research, this is done world over, by research, the best performers in this are kids, kindergarten kids. Why? Because the moment the kindergarten kids get this problem, they start going towards a solution. And while they are building the tower, they start iterating the solution. What the traditional management does, okay, let's call for a meeting. Okay, let's define what the problem is. And they'll spend hours and hours on discussing, right? And then give the last 20% of the time to build the tower as if big strategy has been made and it has been done. Startups don't do that, right? Real startups start with the problem and start with the prototyping. You don't make a large strategy, you make a good and fast prototype. Right? And the moment you fail fast, you learn fast, you fail fast again, and the process goes. That's where we require the larger organizations to go. We are trying our best. We are a large company, but we still, some part I think we've been successful, not fully though. The second thing is about abductive thinking, right? Managers, traditional management is taught to be deductive. If this is equal to this, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. But 2 plus 2 can also be 5. Can it be? Right? It's in your mind. Somebody created 2 plus 2, 4, right? Nobody said 2 plus 2 had to be 4. So deductive thinking is about opening up your mind, the blue ocean thing. So questions which you ask, and which I ask in my meetings, quite a lot of them, not all of them, is what if we do this? What if we have to achieve a 40% growth? The first year we achieved 35% growth, because the what if question was, what if we achieve 50% growth? Now, the moment you say, what if we achieve 50% growth, and why not we achieve that, and how do we achieve that? More than a lot of our meetings I've realized in my professional career, sitting with the management guys, and I think some management guys are going to bash me up once I go out, but a lot of the management guys, what they focus on is what is going to be. We are going to achieve 30% growth, Y on Y. We're going to extend margins by another 5%. We'll be 45% margin. How? The practices start coming the same old ones. We'll give discounting, we'll give coupons, we'll do a fashion show. So you tend to get into that same solution for a new target. You don't tend to think new. Because when it is new, then you're not sure it's going to be success or failure. And failure is something which scares the shit out of people, right? But if you really want to design, if you really want to bring in the next level, if Steve Jobs was thinking about failure, he could have be making some bigger buttons right now on the phone, right? So you got to be thinking, what if, in a much more broader sense. So this was my key task, which I termed it as a project, okay? And how we did it was, first thing what we did, can 3 simple colors connect the organization? Can 3 colors connect the entire thing? So we used semiotics and symbols internally. We made sure that the brand language is simple. Simplicity was the key. We made sure that style and fashion does not go away. It does not mean that you're catering to the mass. It just should not be trendy, right? Even the middle class, the lower middle like trendy stuff, right? And value is what you give all together. So to start off, as one of the projects, we started on focusing these 4 pillars or these 4 jigsaw puzzles, integrating these. So one was product, one was visual communication, one was space, and one was people. So if you see the colors which we chose, I mean, I initially thought like a traffic signal, right? Red, yellow, but for some strange reason we put blue. I don't know why. So it continued. Now these 3 colors combined everything within the system of design, which was operating system of FBB. So it brought in a sense of discipline. So we divided our products into 3 sides. We said we'll do core, fashion, and discount. We will color code the core with X color code the fashion with Y color, and color code the offer or discount with Z color. Moment the buyers, the merchandisers, the planning guys start thinking, they know that these are 3 buckets in my store. I'm going to deal only with these three buckets. It simplifies their thinking also, right? We graded the whole store layout in this way. We didn't literally paint, but to every store we gave a layout which sort of color combined the same 3 colors into the space. So this brought in a lot of discipline in the way the spaces was being managed. See, we are a fairly democratic company in terms of setup. We are quite decentralized. Right? We don't believe in controlling everything from head office. So it has its own set of plus and own set of minus. Minus was that when you push across the thought, it gets fragmented into 4 different thoughts or 5 different thoughts. This helped them to visualize saying, okay, my store has to look like this. Where do I have to put my core? Where do I have to put my fashion? Where do I have to put everything? Was very, very clear. So early in the morning, products go into their respective places as defined by the product colors. We did the same thing for communication also, right? In terms of defining the communication, simplifying the whole communication. I remember before taking in, we used to have this thing of saying, buy 1 for 99, 2 for 199, 3 for 399, and the customer would be standing next to the furniture and scratching her head saying, what offer am I getting? So we said that in our product pricing strategy, whatever we have to give to the customer has to be eliminated, it has to be calculated. All the customer wants to know is how much I'm going to pay. Now that how much I'm going to pay, if you provide it in a much more clearer, lucid manner, the value seems to be much higher, right? So the stores, if they look aspirational, simpler, clearer, a $299 t-shirt actually might be looking for $399. When the price point is being checked, it's $299, there's a perceptual discount. So you don't need to really look into complicating the communication. In this whole process, we also realized a very small insight. When I went into the store in the morning, when the trucks come into the store, the trucks are being inverted, the stock is inverted by my sales staff. And the sales staff is basically a 7,000 to 10,000 rupees earning guy. He was a basic graduate, right? And he's been given this complicated sheet, which is the article codes and the article numbers, which he has to read, and then he has to put the stock from the warehouse to the particular shelves. That process was extremely tedious. Things used to go from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock in identifying what stock or what carton goes where. So we simply brought the same color coding into the cartons also. So moment you know there is a layout in the store, this is a green colored box with a green color signage going into a green colored space. Right? So it helped us to align the labor or the physical labor also into the morning hours and bring in some bit of. Then we brought in the service thing where we wanted to say we are not a typical organization where I will push a strategy, I'm the new concept head, I will push a strategy and you guys will simply execute it. We started listening them, we started creating a feedback, we started creating these small seva cards which the staff would fill up and send back to the zones and then the head offices. There was a backward feeding mechanism. And of course a lot of tools to do this. This is what FBB moved into, from the chaotic and not so aspirational to something which is much more simpler and clearer, and how the space inside is much more clearer in terms of the solution. We felt that the customer of today, the target should not be that she should spend more time. The target should be she should spend optimum and efficient time, right? Because people don't have time now. We go into a mall, you want to go into the shop, buy your best product in the best way and come out. You don't want to spend. So if your design is simple, if your communication is simple, it helps you to fasten the process. Some numbers, I think it doesn't mean anything, but still put. This is where we are today. Right? It's a 2,000 crore company right now. We are growing very healthy. And I think, again, the only link with Big Bazaar is it's part of the Big Bazaar 182 stores, and it's also going into the tier 2, tier 3, where we have to look at the aspirations and the fashion content of the tier. This is what I learned from this whole thing. Okay, these are last few slides, if you're getting impatient. I learned certain leadership lessons. It is irrespective of design, irrespective of management, it was leadership lessons for me, right? Number one, be comfortable with the diversity. I had to deal with 5 zones. A Calcutta guy would talk about something else. A Bangalore guy would talk about something else. The product is very similar. You can't make 2 products in a short cycle. But you got to listen and you got to be comfortable with the diversity. And this situation will come with everybody in this room who tomorrow is in a leadership position or is in a managerial position, or even if it is not in a managerial position. Because you got to be interacting with 10 kinds of people, right? And if we see in India now, a lot of people are sort of cross-migrating, right? I'm a North Indian from Himachal, now down in Bombay. So I got to understand the sensitivities of Bombay and the Marathi community there, right? I don't have to join MNS, but I should still understand the sensitivity, right? So I have to be comfortable with the diversity. And as we move ahead, the companies are going to get more and more global. So today, what we talk about Karnataka and and Delhi and Northeast, tomorrow we're going to talk about Asia, because spaces with technology are getting smaller, right? So diversity is one of the key things. I mean, a lot of times we hear about these, issues where we as Indians face outside. I think sometimes we don't tend to accept the diversity. We like to be within ourselves. That's something which, as leadership, you got to do that, because tomorrow your team is going to be global. You got to be a behavioral psychologist when you are a leader, right? You got to understand and listen. What do the psychologists do? They don't do anything. They listen, right? They listen to your problem. And you got to empathize with what the person on the other table is saying, whether it is an individual, whether your department, whether the whole organization. And you got to create tools which helps you to listening. That's where technology starts coming in. As the leader, you got to zoom in and out, right? Zoom in means I'm looking into the problem, right, which is micro in nature, and I'm going to zoom out because I'm going to look at multiple problems of how the whole system is running. If I know how the whole system is running and I find a problem there, I jump in back there, solve that problem, and come out back again. If I stay there for too long, then I'm actually stuck in that small problem and I'm not focusing on the larger picture, right? So as leaders or as design leaders or leaders, you got to constantly zoom in and zoom out into the system which you are creating. This question I already asked, right? Why and what if? This creates a power of imagination. 5 whys, all of you must be knowing, you got to ask at least 5 times why. So when juniors come to me, they say, I want to design this. I ask them why. Because the customer will like it. Why will the customer like it? Because the customer will do X, Y, Z. Why will the customer do X, Y, Z? So by the time he starts banging his head, he also is into the real answer, right? He knows why he's doing it. Don't communicate always top down. Large organizations tend to do that, right? I'm the boss, he's my manager, he's my sub-manager, so I will just push the communication down. Don't do it that way. Yes, now a lot of companies like HCL, etc., have started looking backwards from this customer or from the staff to the CEO. That's also good, but also communicate sideways. Sideways is because your organization will have multiple functions, right? If you do not do collaboration with multiple functions, how are you going to get a solution? So start working sideways, start thinking sideways. Don't think as adversaries, don't think as, which is my next slide, don't try to control. Don't try to be a territorial animal when you are there in your organization, because this kills the leadership of what we want tomorrow, right? This problem we face very often in large organizations. And apply steady pressure. Zoom in, zoom out, keep on applying pressure, right? Zoom in, zoom out. I don't do reviews. I started thinking I'll do reviews. I used to call for these so-called bi-monthly or monthly reviews, and then I realized I can't do reviews. So rather than doing these monthly reviews, which happens every once in a month, where all the colleagues or the team members come in and they enter with a completely, a face which is almost like they're going to get blown off, right? Answers already prepared, and basically they all get prepared for the worst. Now the problem is when you're meeting in the review, you're not only discussing the past. More important thing is you're discussing the future. So if everybody comes with a closed mind, right, and everybody comes thinking, what am I going to get next in terms of blasting, how are you going to open the minds? And how are you going to give a solution for the next step or the next future? Right? So make sure, rather than doing these reviews, which I do, it's up to you, I keep on getting in and out, not butting in, but keep on getting in and out, asking about the zoom in, zoom out kind of a methodology. With technology, computers come in, human factor goes out, pens and pencils are evaporating, right? But what happens is, what is inside your computer is not on your face. And what is not on your face is generally not in your mind. right? So make sure, and this I've started doing with my project design team, where all the, the status update is on their individual notice boards, which tells about, so there is a project A, it has all the, milestone tracking and the current record, and they keep on plugging in and out on the yellow post-it, which milestone they've achieved, they take it out, which they have not achieved, they keep on in. So everybody is visually there when you look at it, somebody looks into it, they know where the status is, right? So you don't need to send mails when you do things like these. And of course, you need to know when you got to be a dictator sometimes, because designers or managers tend to just keep on discussing over 10, 20 cups of coffee without reaching any solution. So you got to have a time restriction when you do brainstorming. You got to have a time restriction, because the more restricted the time is, generally 15, 20 minutes, your mind tends to work faster. If you stretch that 20 to 2 hours, you can just become lethargic and nothing comes out. So try when to stop the discussions, try when to take the decisions. So a sense of dictatorship can become. This is what I've already talked. I do this, I really try to do this. Genuinely, I try to do this. I do not present myself as a focus. I push my team in front. So whenever there are things where awards are happening, I try to avoid that. Not that I don't like, but it is the team which has done it. It is focused on the team. There is a concept called servant leadership. I think that concept really works well with people. I've tried it myself, and it really works with people. It gives your people a sense of commitment, passion, everything what you require. All these subjective words start coming alive when you try to do this. And for everybody, a designer or a strategic thinker, suck in everything, right? We generally tend to do that. When I'm a store designer, I might just go to the store and look at shelves and lighting. When I'm a technology guy, I might look at the technology fair only. When I'm a marketing guy, I'll only go to the marketing fairs and the marketing conferences, right? But the ecosystem is much bigger, right? A marketing guy understanding about HR, an HR guy understanding about administration understanding about IT opens up your mind, right? Because as a leader, you're not a specialist, you're a journalist. You're handling systems, you're handling people. So the more you understand, you suck insights, you tend to learn more, you tend to get more thoughts into you. I sometimes feel Kishorji does that, because all he does is he goes on the shop, he stands outside, he just observes. On Sundays you will find him, he'll just stand in the corner and observe. In design language, we call it fly in the wall, right? It's an observation skill where you're a fly, you're in the corner, you're just watching everybody the way they are, and you're registering in your mind. Because that registration of what things are happening sometime in future or near future or distant future will come as a part of your decision. And that is what we call hunch or intuition. But the intuition is actually an outcome of what you've seen and observed or accumulated over the past few years or past few months. That comes as a decision. So as a strategic guy, suck insights from everything. And the last, we all think that there's going to be an end, right? There's no end. It's a journey. So as designers, as strategic thinkers, as leaders, focus more on the journey rather than the outcome. Because there is no outcome, there is no perfection. These words don't exist. We make them because we want to be, felicitated, or we want to be awarded. But there is actually no journey, there's no end. The system keeps on running. So focus your energy. I focus my energy more on the processes, more on the journey rather than the outcome. Thank you so much.